Chairman. Mr. Chairman, if you don't, I know it's not my turn, but while Senator Lee is here as another of the co-authors of this bill, I'd just like to associate myself with the senator's remarks. Thank you, Senator Lee.
Senator Blumenthal.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Welcome to the committee. Mr. Rosen, and thank you for your service to our nation and your families. I understand that you have answered Senator Klobuchar's question about the Mueller report by saying that you have had no involvement with it, but I want your commitment here that you will support full and complete release of that report to the United States Congress without redactions or edits of any kind.
Well, Senator, I'd like to say this respectfully, but if I'm confirmed, I would be the Deputy Attorney General and I would be working with the Attorney General.
I'm asking for your views. I understand your position. I have the organizational chart, which I'm going to discuss in just a moment. I want your commitment that you personally, as the second in command of the United States Department of Justice, will support full release of that report.
So Senator,
it's a yes or no question.
It's really not, and there are circumstances where yes or no is itself misleading. So I'm not trying to be evasive, but I'm trying to avoid saying something that by its incompleteness would be misleading, because I'm sure you don't want that. And so you're talking about a situation.
Let me just tell you, Mr. Rosen, your predecessor came before this committee, Rod Rosenstein. I asked him for his commitment that he would appoint a special counsel to review the potential collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia, and also possible obstruction of justice.
And the
he
results
refused to provide that commitment. I was the only member of this committee that voted against him, despite his other qualifications. And I will vote against you if you fail to commit that you will respect the institutional authority and obligation of the United States Congress to review that report. Will you support complete and total disclosure?
Senator, I have great respect for the importance of the relationship between the executive branch and the Congress, and certainly value having a positive relationship on that score. I equally have respect for the advise and consent function, and I appreciate your role in that. But I've indicated pretty clearly that I've had no involvement whatsoever in the Mueller proceedings.
So I'm going to just, I
department.
apologize for interrupting you,
Okay.
but our time is limited. If you are not able to give me an affirmative response, I want to move on and ask you about your supervision. You have direct responsibility to supervise all the United States attorneys. Will you commit to this committee and the United States Congress that you will protect the ongoing investigations in the Southern District of New York and the Eastern District of New York from any interference by the White House, either to fire or discipline members of those United States attorneys' offices?
So I think what I would say about that is what I've said before, which is I see, and I think Mr. Chairman Graham alluded to this, there's different functions in the department, and the function with regard to law enforcement, investigations, and prosecutions is one that needs to be free of improper political influences, by the way, from any source. That includes Congress as well as any other source.
I agree. And will you commit that you will protect against any attempt to interfere in those ongoing investigations, to fire a United States attorney, to discipline anyone in those offices, to remove anyone from those investigations, otherwise interfere with investigations of the President of the United States, who has been named, in effect, as an unindicted co-conspirator, individual number one?
So I don't think I can do better than what I just said before. I think that what I said before is accurate. You embedded some additional things that I'm not addressing.
Well, I'm not inventing anything, Mr. Rosen. I'm stating what the facts are and the need for the independence and integrity of the Department of Justice. You've never served as a prosecutor. You have no background in the Department of Justice. You're going to be engaged in on-the-job training. Without any disrespect, you have no credibility as a prosecutor or as a law enforcement official. So what I think we need from you is a firm and unequivocal commitment that you will protect those offices from any interference, that you'll stand up to the White House or the Congress.
I think I've addressed the subject, and I don't have anything additional to add, Senator. I will differ with you in that I believe that I would bring credibility to this position. It's your, of course, option to have a different opinion if you choose.
Let me ask you what you will do if there is an attempt to ask you questions about those investigations. Will you, in turn, ask those U.S. attorneys' offices questions that are posed to you by the White House?
So there's a couple of different dimensions there. Let me take the more important one. I can tell you, I can tell every member of the committee, I have a long professional track record that I'm proud of integrity, of ethics, of professionalism, and that's not going to change. I am going to do the right thing in accordance with the law and the rules and the ethical requirements at every juncture.
And will you, in effect, say no to the White House?
If the appropriate answer is to say no to somebody, then I will say no. And that was the other dimension that you just alluded to, is the communications process with the White House. I think Senator Klobuchar raised that with me, and I alluded to the Holder memo. And so I won't repeat my remarks, but I'll reference it.
Let me just ask you one last question, because my time is about to expire.
Of course.
Would you agree that Roe v. Wade was correctly decided?
What I would agree with is that it's the precedent of the Supreme Court for better than 40 years now, and unless and until that changes, it's the law.
Was it correctly decided?
I don't have anything to add to what I just said.
Was Brown versus Board of Education correctly decided?
Senator, I don't think that it would be a productive exercise for me to go through the most thousands of Supreme Court opinions and say which ones are right and which ones are wrong.
These are pretty simple questions. They're answerable by yes or no. Most lawyers, I suspect, would agree, based on knowledge of the law, that these two cases, pillars of our jurisprudence, were correctly decided by the United States Supreme Court.
I have views about lots of Supreme Court cases, but I'm not being nominated for this position to be the Solicitor General nor a judge. And I think in this context, the point I'm trying to make is that whatever the law is, whether it's the decision I would favor or disfavor, I see it as the role of the Department of Justice to uphold the law such as it is, unless Congress or the courts change it.
Well, just for the record, so we all understand, you're not nominated to be Solicitor General, but he or she reports to you, correct? So you are in charge of the arguments that are made to the Supreme Court. You would be in a position to suggest that the Solicitor General argue that Roe v. Wade should be overruled. That's why I'm asking you this question. Same with Brown versus Board of Education.
And
we're entitled to know your personal views.
well, I would also have a boss known as the Attorney General, so I would not be the final decision maker in that process. I think, and I'll say it one more time because I don't want to use up all of your time, is I think the important thing in the role that I am being considered for is fidelity to the law, to uphold and enforce the statutes that Congress has enacted and the decisions that the Supreme Court has promulgated, and unless and until they're changed, as long as they're consistent with the Constitution, I will uphold them.
My time has expired. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Hawley.